I want to be excited for Harmonious. I want to be. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet. I'm curious to see what it's going to happen. I'm hopeful. I want to be excited for it. We'll see what happens when it comes.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I like that term. I want to be excited because it's like, I don't want it to be terrible. I want it to be amazing. But there's this small part of me that's like, but do you believe that's going to happen?
Right.
It's like, I don't know. That's Lauren Staniszewski, who's here to talk about what it's like to visit Walt Disney World in 2021, Galaxy's Edge, Animal Kingdom Lodge, plus Universal Orlando, so much more. It's going to be fun. You're listening to the Tomorrow Society podcast. Thanks for joining me here on episode 151 of the Tomorrow Society podcast. I am your host, Dan Heaton. I hope you're all doing great out there. I'm excited to bring you this week's show. My guest is Lauren Staniszewski. I've had a few recent episodes on this show kind of looking ahead with Lantesta and Tim Grassi talking about what will Disney do and what do we think about that and what are some ideas on things we would like to do in the future. Sometimes it's good also to look at the actual experience of visiting the parks because I can get a bit on the intellectual side where I'm thinking, what would be the best thing for capacity or whatnot. Sometimes it's good to just look at what's it been like to visit the parks. That's why it was fun to talk with Lauren because she's taken multiple trips to the parks this year, stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge, Polynesian, went to Universal and stayed at Cabana Bay. A lot of information about standby lines. How are they moving? What was it like with COVID and mask policies? And just how much fun has it been to go to the parks this year? And what are some of the recent things like Rise of the Resistance, the Velocicoaster, Hagrid's, all things I have not done. So I'm living a little vicariously here through Lauren. And she is really interested in the music of the parks, has written some for the Disney blog, and is someone who knows a lot about the parks. And it was just a fun conversation. We dug into a wide range of issues, including questions about the Harmonious barges. You heard us at the beginning talking about the show. It's interesting, too, because we recorded this not that long ago, just before October 1st. So things like Harmonious has started since then. Enchantment has started. And as this is being released, tomorrow is the date when Disney starts Disney Genie Plus and the Lightning Lane and everything. So there are just so many things changing at this point that no matter what we talk about, the experience of visiting the parks just keeps changing. So Lauren's experience with all standby and with how everything was set up then is different than people had months later, and especially you're going to have with everything involved with Genie Plus and the Lightning Lane. So I think it's kind of a cool time capsule, kind of like a trip report, but in a way just talking through that experience and then thinking how different things are going to really be going forward. Before I get to my conversation with Lauren, I did want to give a big shout out to my latest member of the Tomorrow Society through Patreon. That is David Schulenberg. Dave, thanks so much for helping to support the show. Makes a huge difference. I'm serious here. Really helps to keep things rolling here at the Tomorrow Society podcast with a small monthly contribution. Also gets you access to some very cool perks, including the monthly Tomorrow Society Bulletin show, fun items that I'll send you through the mail, and a lot more, plus the bonus podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to patreon.com/Tomorrow Society. You can find out all about it. So I hope you enjoyed this show. It was really fun to record. I'm hoping to get to the parks at some point. Probably won't be this year, but I'm hoping for early next year. Fingers crossed that it ends up working out. But in the meantime, I get to talk to cool people like Lauren and learn more about her experiences. So let's do this. Let's go talk to Lauren Staniszewski. Stan, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you. I'm so happy that you're able to join.
Thanks, Stan. I'm really excited to be able to chat with you and meet you. I've been a longtime fan of the podcast, and it's an honor just to get the chance to chat Disney.
Well, yeah, I really enjoy too. I know I often talk to Imagineers and others, but I also, it's possibly a bit selfish, but I haven't been to the parks recently. So I also like hearing about it. I know you've done some really cool trips, but before we even dive into that, I want to talk about that because I have a lot of questions about what's been happening and going. But I'm curious about you a bit because I don't know that much about how did you get interested? And I know you've done some writing and you've obviously are really into Disney and the parks. How did it initially connect with you where you thought this is something more than just kind of, hey, I go on vacation here and there?
It's kind of interesting. I wanted to go to the parks for a long time ever since I was a little girl. And it was one of those instances where life just kept happening. Whether a parent would lose a job or we moved houses or something like it was one of those instances where we kind of said, okay, we're going to go when you're 6 and then life happened. And okay, we're going to go when you're 10 and then life happened and we never went. And we're going to go when you're 13 and then that didn't happen. So I got hooked when I was really little and I watched one of those you remember when the Disney Channel used to have those preview weekends on cable kind of thing? And there was a Disney World special. I still remember it's the most random thing that there was this scene where they were doing scenes over Bay Lake and Space Mountain. And it was to Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf. And I have yet to I've been looking all over YouTube trying to find that first behind the scenes, like Disney World, get to know the property kind of video. But I got hooked on that when I was little. So I always wanted to go. And then we never had the chance to go. But I finally did get to take my first trip to Disney World was when it was the Millennium Celebration. And I was hooked. I mean, I had wanted to go for years, the bulk of my childhood, and to see Disney World in the magical state that it was with the Millennium Celebration and all of the parades and especially Epcot. There was something really special about Epcot during the Millennium Celebration that I was just kind of hooked. And so started going and have gone lots of times, as I've become more of an adult and I've been able to have a little more control over when I can go and my finances and things. We've had the opportunity to go a lot, participated in a lot of Run Disney races, used Run Disney as an excuse to, hey, if I I'm going to train and get healthy and I get a vacation out of it. Sweet. I get to go to Disney World or go to Disneyland when they were doing races out there. So did a lot of the races, went to Disney a whole lot. And yeah, it's just become part of the lifestyle at this point. My husband and I just became DVC owners about a year ago. And that kind of just has sealed the deal at this point.
That's a good time to get started going. I didn't go during the Millennium Celebration. It just happened to be the time when I was right after college and it wasn't going as much, but kicking myself because Epcot with the whole thing. And that was when the Illuminations, Reflections of Earth was kind of getting started and the Tapestry of Dreams or I forget Tapestry of Nations, the better one.
Right.
But yeah, not that the other one I would love to see now, but just, a really cool time to get started. And I can see why it would inspire you to keep going because it was a cool time for Disney. And I know I mentioned that you've done some writing where I know for a little while you wrote some for the Disney blog and you talked to one of the guests. I had Russell Brower and did a few of that. So what kind of got you interested in that side of it and doing some writing, which I'm familiar with too?
So a long time ago, I decided I was going to try doing a blog, but my blog, which never took off. I mean, it's probably buried in the interwebs somewhere. It's not very good, but I am a musician by day. I'm a music teacher, and I've always really appreciated how much the music has impacted my experiences when I'm at Disney. Whether it's the background loops, I have an audiophile background loop collection on my computer that, I just try to collect every piece of background music and things that I can. But my blog, once upon a time, was going to be focused on diving into the composers and the nuts and bolts of how that background music got created and what was the inspiration for it and how was it integrated into the different areas and lands and why did they choose the music they did. If they did like a playlist, for instance, at Epcot, how they used to do the pre-show illuminations, like why did they pick what they picked from those artists? Or if they hired a composer, what fueled that? So that was really, I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that Russell Brower wrote that music. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to, send him a message on Twitter and see what happens. And I ended up doing a mini Twitter interview over direct messages, limited when it was back to limited to 140 characters each. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to do these questions the right way so that I can get some good information. But I've always really been interested in how the music integrates with that. And so it's kind of a marriage of my two loves of music and of Disney.
Yeah, you're describing how I often get guests for this podcast with just hey, and they're like, you know who I am? What? It's that a lot. So I know it seems very complex, but it's a lot of that kind of approach. Though I appreciate I'm not doing these interviews on Twitter direct message with character limits. That might be too much. So you mentioned the interventions loop, which is incredible. What are some other background loops that are your favorites that from over the years? Because I have some, but I'm curious what yours are.
Well, I definitely love the Tomorrowland loop. That's another one. I love how they integrated some of the old Disney tunes from before I even started visiting the parks into that background loop. So even if when you're visiting Tomorrowland, you can hear like If You Had Wings is buried in there, and you can hear some of those other retro bits of melodies here and there that have been woven into the background. So definitely love the Tomorrowland background loop. Love Adventureland too. I found when I was doing some of my background research that I think it's Belafino Marimba Ensemble did a lot of the Adventureland music, that Disney picked that. And apparently they also opened for the Grateful Dead back in the day. So this like marimba ensemble from the West Coast that creates their own marimbas and opened for the Grateful Dead. Like I thought that was so cool. That's whoever would have thought that you could hear the same music opening for the Grateful Dead and walking down Adventureland on your way to get a Dole Whip. So that's another fun fact, or another musical favorite loop. I love, there's so many. I love the Oasis loop in Animal Kingdom. It's gorgeous. It's just so beautiful. And I feel like that's one of my go-tos, like on a rainy day, and you can just sit outside and watch the rain come down and listen to it. It's perfect. It's such a mood setter, and it's really soothing. I've got to do at least some Interventions, clearly that's always been a top favorite of mine. I've always had a really big thing for a lot of the Illuminations music too, but I think a lot of that goes back to my love of the Millennium Celebration when I first started visiting, sort of a thing. And then one of the more recent ones that I really like, right outside of Hollywood Studios, and there's some modern takes on Disney tunes, but they're big band arrangements. And I think it's really cool how they did some of the arranging to really fit the old school Hollywood theme that they're going for at Hollywood Studios. But you have the pull-ins from different, more Disney IP sort of thing. I find the music to be really, really interestingly arranged. So that's another one that I like.
Those are all great. Yeah. I mean, I could probably go off on most of those for a while. The Oasis, I mean, a lot of those, there's a CD you probably have at the Animal Kingdom CD. Russell Brower was actually involved with that came out right around when it opened. It's not like it's on YouTube, but it's not all over all the streaming services, but it's great. And that's like my really relaxing go-to. Yep. I think the Oasis is on there as like that theme. And then, man, there's just so much good stuff. I could go on about the Interventions loop for a while, but I think those are all great examples. And like you said, just hit on how much of a role the music's going to play in the parks, or does, because it sets the right mood. Like Tomorrowland's a perfect example where you're going on the People Mover and then you just hear like you said, If You Had Wings or something from a lot of the old Space Mountain music. And just there's a lot of really cool. The Star Tunnel music, there's a lot of great stuff there. But speaking of course, going to Disney World, I know you've been busy lately. I've seen on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, I'm like, man, she's been able to go, which is awesome. And I know recently this summer you went to both Walt Disney World and Universal. And I'm curious just in general too, what's it been like to visit this year? Because I know there's been times when it was very empty, like right now, and we're recording this in September. But then there were times this summer when it seemed like it was full on summer crowds. But I'm curious just in general, kind of what's it been like to go in kind of a different time like we have right now?
So we actually, my husband and I had two trips. One was just a quick birthday getaway that we did in May. In fact, we didn't even go to the parks at all. We just did resorts. It was just a chance to relax kind of thing. And that first trip was when the mask mandate in Florida had recently been shifted to where you were no longer required to wear masks outside. So it was one of the first times that any of those requirements had been changed or lifted. And it was a big deal because when we had arrived and we were in the resorts, for the most part, you had to wear masks inside and outside on the buses. And it was pretty much whenever you weren't in your room or at the pool, if you were moving, you needed to wear a mask. And then the last day, full day of our trip was when that had been lifted. And we went to Disney Springs that day. And it was almost a little overwhelming just to see so many people that were there. It happened to be a Saturday as well. So it was really crowded and there were no masks anywhere outside at all. So it was more of, I think, just a shock just after having experienced what we did over the last year, 15 months. And for the first time to have some of those mandates lifted, it was a little bit of a relief to not have to wear a mask outside in the Florida heat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was one of those that was like, okay, am I okay? How are we doing? We're feeling a little anxious. No, we're doing okay. Okay, we're maintaining distance as much as we can. Okay, no, we're going to be good here. So it was a little more, you had a heightened sense of awareness as you were walking around the different guest areas and sort of thing. But by and large, it really felt safe. I mean, Disney does a fantastic job of making sure that whatever the health mandate was at the time, because it then shifted when we went again in July, whatever it happens to be, as the situation evolved, it became one where, Disney was going to follow through. If they said they were going to do it, they were going to follow through on it. And there was a certain comfort in knowing that as you were going through and visiting the different areas.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, just you went in July and they've now changed where, then it was indoors again. And then they've made some tweaks to that where it's like not the queues. And we're not going to go through every step, but it's just interesting how many adjustments have happened just in the last 6 months or so. And who knows going ahead what it will be like. But another thing too about it is, for now, as we record this, it's still all standby. They don't have their lightning lane, or you can call it fast pass, whatever. But I know when you visited, it was all standby, which with them using queues differently could lead to a lot of people out in the paths, but also they might move quicker. So how do the standby lines work given, I haven't been there with no fast pass and, however long since they started it?
I will say we used both the My Disney Experience app and the Touring Plans Lines app a lot. Just to be able to compare apples to apples and try to navigate and figure out where we could best spend our time. For the most part, whatever the posted wait was, it was generally less when we were going on an attraction of some sort. The one exception to that on our July trip was Slinky Dog Dash. And I got to tell you, that was one of the worst queues to be stuck in.
Yes.
When the line is actually longer than the posted wait. The line for Slinky Dog, it was recommended, it said the posted wait was 90 minutes, but it was recommended that it was only 50 minutes. So right now. So we were like, okay, we're going to give it a shot. And the line started all the way back at Little Mermaid, Voyage of the Little Mermaid. And there's no shade.
Oh my God.
Those umbrellas were very scant in between as you're trying to navigate your way down. And even the queue itself for Slinky Dog, the shaded part that's in the building is relatively small.
Yeah.
So we ended up waiting more like 2 hours for that instead of what we thought was going to be 50 minutes. But that was an anomaly. For the most part, everything else that we did, it was either at or under the posted wait limit when we visited the parks in July.
Yeah, that Slinky Dog queue. I mean, I went, when I rode it was 2 years ago, and it was this time of year when it was very empty, not as empty as now, but very empty. And it was like 30 minutes and it was like 97 degrees. And I remember standing there, even in the queue, not in the, down the path to the other end of the world. And I was like, this is horrible. This is so uncomfortable. Even when you're in the shade, it was just like, it's one of those spots of the park where you stand there, and there are other spots like this, and you're like, there's nowhere in the world hotter than this exact moment right now. So I don't know. So I'm impressed you hung on and waited the whole time, because Slinky Dog's a nice coaster, but there is a limit. There is a limit for me.
Yeah, it was. So my husband and I, we hadn't been back to Hollywood Studios since 2018. Mm-hmm. So we knew when we were going to visit in July, we're like, my husband is a huge Star Wars fan. Just Star Wars for him is like everything else Disney for me. So we knew we hadn't done a park like going commando for a long time. We like from rope drop to rope drop kind of a thing. But we knew that, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do all the things that we've never done before. We're going to do Toy Story Land, and we're going to do Galaxy's Edge, and we're going to do Mickey and Minnie's, and we're going to hit, all of these different things. And it was one of those things where we saw the Slinky Dog and we're like, okay, well, we got to do it. So we decided we were going to do it. And then when the wait at that point, after you've invested an hour, it's like, well, I'm not getting out of this line now. I'm committed. I'm in, and we have to do it. So we're going to suck it up and do it. So we did, but we ended up we had a reservation for Brown Derby right after that. And we ended up trying to see if we could get into Brown Derby early, and we couldn't. They didn't have any availability, but we just sat in the air conditioning in those leather chairs for an hour just to re-catch ourselves before our actual dining reservation happened, because the sun just zapped it out of us.
Yeah, I understand that, especially if you haven't been there, that you would want to do it. But yeah, I was so used to going in like January for so long, or March or whatever, with kids and stuff. And then, yeah, being there in September, and I'm sure the summer is like this, I just really underestimated when I was there last how much it just wipes you out. And I'm like, I'm just standing. I'm not moving. Why is this so bad? But I'm impressed that you did that. So speaking of, since you brought it up though, Rise of the Resistance, which I have not done. I was there when it was just Smuggler's Run, which I enjoyed, but is it as good as the hype? And I think I know the answer.
Well, I got to say, I was pretty skeptical, because you hear a lot of hype, and we've been trying to avoid spoilers now for how long? I mean, you can only avoid these spoilers for so long. And I will say this, it is worth avoiding the spoilers, and it is completely, it takes theme park experiences to another level. It's unlike anything else I've experienced at a Disney park.
Yeah, I have not sat down and watched the whole video. I've only watched some things. I swear, every time I'm watching anything, all of a sudden the clip of Kylo Ren shows up, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I've seen that 100 times. Or the picture of the stormtroopers, in the Star Destroyer, or where you walk through. But really, I've avoided it just because I feel like I did that with Flight of Passage, which is not on the same level, but still awesome. And when I finally did it, I think it was much better, because I went into that, and you sit down and they open the thing, and I'm like, whoa, you had no idea. And I suspect Rise of the Resistance is that about times 100.
It's very cool. It's very cool. In my mind, it lived up to the hype that I encountered from other people, for sure.
So what did your husband think of Galaxy's Edge, being such a Star Wars fan, just in general, like everything, the whole, I didn't do the droids and the lightsabers, but Ogas and just the whole thing. I suspect you did a lot of it.
Oh yeah. No, he was like a kid. He was a child again. And it was amazing, because he knows everything in the Star Wars universe, like all the different names of the animals and the characters. And the history of the Jedi and all of these things. And I almost felt like we would have been walking through with one of our kids, me watching my husband walk through Galaxy's Edge. His mind was blown, and my mind was blown too, but he has a whole other appreciation for it, even beyond my own appreciation for Disney and the parks and the history of things. And it was fantastic. We did the lightsaber. He built the lightsaber, and it was amazing. Built a droid, loved that. One of the best tips that I can say is that we managed to snag a reservation for Oga's actually an hour after the park closed. And that was amazing because you get to stay in the park after the park closes. You can just hang around Galaxy's Edge. You can walk around, and Galaxy's Edge at night is 100 times better than Galaxy's Edge during the day. It's really the lighting effects and everything is stellar. So you get to go and you get to kind of hang around until your reservation time. And when you do go in, you get to take your time. You get to enjoy. We had some great banter with the bartenders that were there who are all playing up in character kind of thing. They even allowed us to take a drink to go. So we were able to sample a number of things, and then we were able to take one in a to-go cup to enjoy as we were walking out to the buses at night. And then when you walk out, there is nobody there. So we got amazing pictures of him with his lightsaber, and just to see all the neon going down Hollywood Boulevard and things like that with, next to nobody nobody else is walking around. That was one of the coolest moments of Galaxy's Edge, was that late night Oga's experience.
So you're saying that it was better than when I went and my reservation was at 9:45 in the morning. Was it better than being there at 9:45 in the morning?
I would imagine. I've not been at 8:45 in the morning or 9:45 in the morning, so I can't say for sure, but I think it could possibly have been.
Also, too, I have not been to Galaxy's Edge at night, but I was there at 5:45 in the morning or 6 a.m. when they did that, open 3 hours early in the morning. And that was pretty cool, though I will say there were a few more people than when you were there. It was a little more crowded. There was a giant line of people going in following the stormtroopers. But no, that sounds amazing. I didn't even think that they would keep it, though, because I would assume that Disney would want people out of the park. But I guess in another way, they're getting a lot more people at Oga's, which, judging by the price of those drinks, is probably good for them. But I like the atmosphere there. I just think it would be cooler, like I said, it being there at night, kind of in that atmosphere, sounds like almost an entirely different place.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Excellent. Well, I know another thing that I'm jealous of. I'm just going to talk about all the things I'm jealous of that you got to do. That's what this is for, is that you stayed at my favorite Walt Disney World resort, the Animal Kingdom Lodge, which I've been to multiple times. I keep thinking the next time we go, we should stay somewhere else. But then I'm like, yeah, but I kind of just want to stay there. So I know you like staying there. So what was the stay like this summer? And I'm curious just in general why that you agree with me that it's awesome.
Well, I will say this too. We actually stayed at Animal Kingdom both in May and in July. And when we were there in May, we stayed at Jambo House. And Jambo House was empty. There was really, very few people there at all. Because at that point, Jambo House was only open for DVC. Right. So there was really only the one floor that was open with very limited guests. No restaurants, no shops, no anything. So you could walk around the grounds and go to the pool, but it really wasn't Jambo House as you and I have grown to know and love through many other visits and experiences. But I will say it was really awesome having the pool to yourself. It was really just us, and there was nobody else there at the pool. So that was kind of nice. When we went in July, we stayed at Kidani Village. And I'm sure you've had a similar experience where, the animals are what makes Animal Kingdom Lodge, right? So you've got to just staying and seeing the animals. The morning that my husband and I checked out of Animal Kingdom Lodge, we just sat on our balcony with coffee until about 9:30 or 10 in the morning. And we watched the giraffes go by and eat. We watched the zebras. We watched, every kind of animal, it felt like that was on the savannah almost paraded by us. in that kind of mid to late morning kind of time frame when everybody else had kind of gone to the parks. And, it's one of those special magical things that you're going to remember and is so impactful. And that's what we love about Animal Kingdom Lodge for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think of any resort at Disney World that like, I haven't done it, but like you mentioned going and not going to the parks and going to the resorts, that's a place where I feel like I could go, especially if it was like a villa, but even so, and just hang out there. And I wouldn't feel, I mean, I would still probably want to go to the parks, don't get me wrong, but I could see if for some reason I couldn't, like for, whatever reason, I think it would still be awesome to do, which is not the case, even with some nice resorts. That's not the case with every resort they have in Disney World that after like a day, I'd be like, okay, I'm done. We're here.
Yeah.
Like we've had, coming back from your room at night and there's just like, oh, there's a giraffe. It's right there. It's just standing by the window. That's totally normal. And the music, you mentioned the music too.
Oh yeah.
The soundtrack to that resort is one of my favorites for sure.
Definitely. It's one of mine too. I find myself every time I come visit, I try to Shazam and get some new music suggestions of different artists that they've thrown in the loop at some point that I can start checking out. So that's definitely one example of the music setting the mood is throughout Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Yeah, for sure. So, I haven't personally eaten. One of the best things about Animal Kingdom Lodge to me is the restaurants. Even the Mara is great too. But I haven't eaten at Jiko. But I love Boma. Sanaa's great. So I mean, which is your favorite of like I would even throw in the Mara, though I doubt that's going to be the top. But of the restaurants that are at that resort, like what's the go-to one for you?
I have to say, we haven't done Jiko either. That's on our list yet. So one of these days we will get to Jiko as well. So then I can have a fair comparison to say that we've eaten everywhere. For breakfast, I've got to go Boma because the breakfast at Boma is fantastic. I still remember we've kind of made it a point of eating breakfast at Boma the morning before we do a race kind of a thing. So when we're trying to carb up before we would go and do a Run Disney race, because it's so good. It's the breakfast buffet there is really great. And I love all of the African inspired dishes that they have there too. It's not your typical buffet kind of a thing. There's always something different there to help pique your taste buds. But Sanaa, the bread service, everybody raves about the breads. I feel it's almost cliche talking about the bread service.
It's okay though.
But it's good. I mean, it's cliche for a reason. It's really good. So that's always good. The butter chicken is always good there too. So I guess if push came to shove and I had to pick one, I'd probably go with Boma. But I also Sanaa is also very good.
Yeah, I was nervous just with COVID that they were going to just say, we're not doing buffet meals really much at all. And granted, some of the buffets, like you said, I'm like, whatever, they can take them or leave them. Some of the ones that are more character focused and the food isn't as good. But with Boma, I was like, like we did the breakfast a few times and really great. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those where, I mean, it's not cheap, but I felt like, maybe it's just the volume of food I ate, but we did okay.
Yeah.
So you also stayed at the Polynesian recently, which is one that I stayed at once as a kid, but haven't been to as an adult because every time I try to price it out, I'm like, oh, I can't do it. But I'm curious for you because I know right now they're doing construction, and did that have much of an impact at all on going there? Was it's still worth I guess the visit?
Yeah, well, for us, so we did, that was when we went in May, and we deliberately went there thinking that all we wanted to do was go to the pool. We wanted just a pool day. And so we stayed there. It was 2 nights that we stayed at the Polynesian. And I will say our room was lovely. We had one of the more recently refurbed studio rooms through DVC that we stayed at, and it was great. Definitely had lots of construction crews moving in and out while they were still updating the rooms, although I think that's pretty much wrapping up at this point, if not already wrapped up. I don't think it necessarily impacted our stay a whole lot. It was more of just kind of a distraction as you're walking from one place to the next. The bigger part of it is when we stayed, we were hoping to get more of the Polynesian cuisine while we were there too. And unfortunately, the timing didn't work out when we went in May. Ohana certainly wasn't open yet. Kona Cafe kind of had more limited hours, and we were able to get into Tambu Lounge, and we got some food from Tambu and got some drinks while we were there as well. But there was still a lot of construction going on in the Great Ceremonial House there, and the monorails were closed at that point too. So it was nice to go back and stay there. The pool absolutely lived up to the expectation. We got some great pool seats that were close to the bar and close to the underwater pathway kind of thing to get up to the slides. So that worked out really, really well. It was kind of sad not having that stuff open yet, but I've been looking at some of the updates that they've had in there and some of the pictures and things since we've been, and it looks gorgeous. So we're looking forward to getting back to visiting at some point again.
Well, it's too bad that it wasn't all open. I'm curious though, we've seen since that point with Ohana, the noodles are gone. Oh, now they're back. And this is gone and this is back. Do you have, I have not been to Ohana. I know this is a terrible thing to say, but do you have really strong feelings about the menu changes? If you went there, how much would that impact your trip if all of a sudden it was not the right type? I feel like I'm going to embarrass myself if I try and go through all these changes. Beyond the noodles, are you dead set on certain things there?
I was definitely team noodles. I mean, I was very glad. I was glad when they said they were going to bring the noodles back. I'm like, well, that's really good. But I know for other members of my family, the make or break was the shrimp at Ohana, and that they didn't have the peel and eat shrimp at first. For some of them was almost heresy. So for them, that there was a line drawn in the sand there, just by the shrimp. It wasn't as much. I enjoy shrimp too, but it wasn't as much of importance to me as it was for some of the other members of my family. So, but I think with Disney too, I mean, even with some of the menu changes, things happen, right? And menu changes happen, and there are you have to make adjustments based on what's available at any given time. And especially having to navigate the pandemic and trying to work through worker shortages or food supply shortages and things like that. I mean, I get it. I understand. The great thing about Disney is that there isn't a shortage of good places to eat. So even if the menu at Ohana was going to change, it would be sad, because there are certainly favorites that we love and that are standard, and especially for some of my family, that shrimp. But they were also very relieved when the shrimp finally came back and the casserole was no longer there too. So
yeah, you bring up a good point about the pandemic and supplies, because the recent everyone lose their mind thought was about the juice that basically that was gone for a bit, and then now the supplier went out of business, but they were able to get it again. So it is something where I think we're going to see more of it as it goes on this year. But like you said, there's plenty of things. Well, I want to make sure we talk about Epcot, where you also were there recently. And speaking of changes, and things that aren't always beloved, when you're there and you're looking out into World Showcase and you see the lagoon and you say, wow, I love my view of all the countries. And then there's these giant structures in the water. So I'm curious, I know I'm not talking just everyone, I'm going to be upset, but how disruptive really is it to the views to see these giant stargates basically in the middle of the water?
It's distracting. It's very distracting. Now, I mean, they're big, and it's not super magical at the moment right now, looking in and seeing them. I'm trying really hard to wait and not judge it until it's actually, a go, because we know that they're supposed to have some kind of water fountains. We've seen some of the videos of the testing of the fountains. I'm not 100% sold based on what I've seen in those testing videos yet of how this is going to work or that it's going to look great. But I'm trying really hard to reserve any opinions or judgments until we can actually see some kind of a finished product. But I can't sugarcoat it. It's at the moment I'm a little nervous, and it is very distracting to look across and have a broken up view of World Showcase.
Yeah, and I'm sure, and this is nothing against Harmonious. I suspect I loved Illuminations, Reflections of Earth so much, though. Yeah. But it's almost like separating that, putting that off to the side. I'm sure Harmonious would be great, but I wish there was a way they could flatten and then move back up or something. Or, there's modern
Right.
technology, I mean, in theory, but
Right.
regardless, I could go on for a while about that, but I there's other things to cover. But also, I believe you were there during the Food and Wine Festival, which strangely was in July, which to me, having been there when it's hot in September, what's it like to be going through Food and Wine in the middle of the summer? I mean, exciting or weird or both?
I mean, it was a little exciting because we were there the second day that it was open. So there was kind of this sense of, oh, yay, it's going to be there when we're there. That's great. But at the same time, you just don't want to eat cheddar cheese soup when it's 100 degrees outside. I mean, so a lot of the food, as tasty as it might be, it's hard to bring yourself to eat some of the rich food, even if it does taste delicious, when the outside temperature is getting closer to what the cooking temperature is of the food. It's a little more challenging to push through and sample as much as you might otherwise want to do when the temperature gets a little cooler.
Yeah, that cheddar cheese soup, that would that feels like a December type food that I want to eat.
Right.
Or January. And I don't mean January when it's 85. I mean normal people January, like Midwest January or something.
Yeah.
But
I will say the tuna poke was delicious. I mean, we went, when the stuff that we did sample, we tried to go for more of the chilled dishes, certainly, than some of the warmer ones. And some of them, like the sushi or the poke bowls or things like that, I mean, they were delicious and fantastic and refreshing, as you would expect them to be.
Well, excellent. That's great to hear. Well, I want to make sure and talk about another part of your stay, which is Universal, and which I'm very excited by a lot of things they've done there recently. I've not gotten back recently enough to do the last few big additions. But first of all, I know you also went and stayed at Cabana Bay, which is a different type of resort, but I've heard a lot of good things. So I'm curious how that was to stay there. I have not stayed there yet.
It was really, really great. I had never stayed at Universal before this trip in July. It had always ever been just like a day trip here or there. And then we would take off to wherever we were staying. Actually, my husband had never been to Universal before.
Oh, wow.
And we decided that we wanted to spend, so our July trip was actually a rescheduled anniversary trip. Our trip from COVID had gotten canceled. We had a cruise actually that we ended up just pulling out of so we could get the money, and we decided we were going to do a split stay, and we were going to stay part at Universal and part at Disney. So we stayed at Cabana Bay for 2 nights, and I was really impressed. It was really cool. The retro theming in Cabana Bay was awesome. Everything down to the Zest soap and VO5 shampoo in the room. I mean, that was totally a throwback. And then the bus system was really pretty easy. I mean, it was about a 5-minute bus ride from the hotel to where you would get off to get into security for the parks. It made a lot of the Disney bus rides actually look really long in comparison. So that was great. The pool area at Cabana Bay is huge. I mean, and this is supposed to be a value resort, but you have these 2 giant pool areas, one with its own lazy river and the other side has this giant water slide. And you could easily just spend a day hanging out at the pool there. We didn't get the chance to do that this time, but it was really cool. And the theming at Cabana Bay was a lot of fun. It fits in really well with Volcano Bay, which is, you can't even get on a bus to go from Cabana Bay to Volcano Bay. The only way is to walk because it's so close. And it has its own gate entrance to get into Volcano Bay too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love the idea of everything being closer. I mean, it's going to be a little different when they add Epic Universe, but even I have not stayed at their the next time I would go to Universal, I've thought about staying at their deluxe resorts because you can walk to the 2 parks and because you can get front of the line. But I know you got early access, though. Was that helpful to have that extra time? I think, and if I remember correctly, you get access to the Harry Potter lands early.
Yeah,
too.
it was huge. So the day that we took advantage of our early access, we were able to get on Hagrid's right away before they even started the virtual queue setup. So we were actually able to ride Hagrid's twice in that day, because typically if you have the virtual queue, they're only going to let you ride once a day. sort of a thing. So that way they cycle as many people through Hagrid's as you can. But because we had gotten there with that early access, we were able to get on Hagrid's once without even needing to use the virtual queue. And then we were able to get on the virtual queue again later in the day to ride it a second time. So then in our first hour, the hour that we were allowed in the park, we did Hagrid's and Velocicoaster twice within the first hour. So to get the two of the heavy hitting rides that they have at Islands of Adventure, even before the park was open to the public, was you really felt accomplished. I mean, it was a huge thing to be able to say, okay, well, this is done. So what else do we want to go do now? And kind of gave you a little bit more freedom for some of the other things that might have had longer lines later in the day.
Well, yeah, and plus you've done the ones that everyone wants to do, so they all go to that, and then you're like, now we're going to go to Forbidden Journey and Hogwarts Express and wherever else, and then you're kind of doing the opposite of most of the crowd. So,
right,
sounds amazing. Well, Velocicoaster first.
Yeah.
I've seen lots of videos. There were so many like travel like bloggers or people that all had the same video of them riding it and going, ah, and it looked amazing. But I'm curious for your experience. You know, I don't know how big of a coaster person you are, but the fact that you did it is a sign that you like them.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Velocicoaster?
It was amazing. It was really, really just a fun, thrilling ride. I'm still blown away that there's no shoulder harness on Velocicoaster. I mean, with as much as it's whipping you around, and that barrel turn, especially over the water, which was probably my favorite part of the ride itself, that and the top hat were my two favorites. But it's amazing how you feel safe. I mean, you still feel secure with everything that they have in place in the train when you're riding it. But just to not have that shoulder harness, for me, I always get headaches when I have those shoulder harness because I'm short. So my head is like right in between it, and then my head ends up bouncing around. But with this, there wasn't any of that. Like you could put your hands up and you didn't have to worry about your head being jostled around or ending up with a headache afterwards. It was just really fun.
Yeah, there's a local Six Flags here in St. Louis that they have this old coaster with shoulder harnesses that every time you do the corkscrew, I slam my head into the side. And I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. So, and I think, though, it probably makes it, like you said, we are seeing a movement away from that. And it gives you all this extra, like, airtime almost because you're not held in. Like, you don't feel like you've been, like you're an astronaut being put into the space shuttle. You're actually more moving around, which, it sounds really fun. So I'm excited. What about Hagrid's? Was that was that terrible? Just awful?
It was just awful. None of you should ride it. So that way I can keep riding and make the line short. No, Hagrid's was hands down probably our favorite ride of the entire trip.
Wow.
Disney or Universal. It was really amazing. The theming and you had all of the elements of a really great theme park. And I should say the best coaster of the trip. I mean, I don't think I could compare Hagrid's and Rise of the Resistance. I think that's a whole other Pandora's box that I'm not ready to open yet. But the experience on Hagrid's with actually riding the motorcycle or being in the sidecar, and the way that they have the story and the track laid out, and all of the surprises and everything, it's also right up there. One of the top coasters experiences of all time.
Yeah, I haven't watched the videos of that either. It's the same story because I just, I feel like I know that you go by really fast, but still some of the like special elements and effects that I've heard a little bit about just sound super cool. And I love the fact that they did something with some physical sets and everything, because I know they have that a bit with the pre-show and the Velocicoaster and everything and the ending. But with Hagrid's especially, it just, for a long time, you didn't see that as much. Even if you think of like Rip Ride Rocket or something, where it's just like, that's a big coaster. That's kind of cool. But at least they're kind of mixing it up more.
Yeah. The story elements in Hagrid's is, I think, really one of the things. Of course, the track and the coaster ride itself, but the story elements and how the coaster elements are integrated into that and having the hard sets involved, it's really, really an amazing and fun combination to experience Hagrid's.
Totally. Well, I referenced Epic Universe, and of course, Disney has their 50th anniversary and new attractions, a lot coming up. I'm curious for you, like looking ahead, what are you most excited about that's kind of coming in the next year or two?
Well, I think if we're talking about attractions, I'm probably most excited for Tron to finish construction at Magic Kingdom. We're coaster people. We love riding coasters, and I looked at videos of it in Shanghai thinking I'll never get to ride it, so I might as well like take a look at it and see it, and then to finally see it being built in Magic Kingdom and the anticipation building for it. I'm very much looking forward to getting on Tron and experiencing that for myself.
Yeah, I'm same here because, I would love to say that we were about to make a trip to Shanghai a few years ago, but it wasn't likely. I mean, if we get to an overseas park, I've been to Paris, but probably end up in Tokyo before there. So when I saw it was coming, I was like, this is cool because it's the fact that it's in Shanghai. It doesn't really matter to me that much. I mean, it doesn't matter, meaning it's not like, oh, I was going to do that. But I'm very excited for that even more than, Ratatouille or even, I'm curious about Guardians, but I don't totally understand what it's going to be yet. So
exactly.
Except for it has a reverse launch, which I don't like reverse launches. Like after Everest and the Mummy's okay, but Everest, I'm like, reverse.
Yeah.
But
I will say too, I have a huge soft spot in my heart for Illuminations. I mean, I knew that it was time for Illuminations to say goodbye. 20 years is a long time for a show to run, and technology changes a whole lot in 20 years. So, I was really sad to see it go, but at the same time, trying to understand, I want to be excited for Harmonious. I want to be. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet. I'm curious to see what it's going to happen. I'm hopeful. I want to be excited for it. We'll see what happens when it comes.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I like that term. I want to be excited because it's like, I don't want it to be terrible. I want it to be amazing. But there's this small part of me that's like, but do you believe that's going to happen?
Right.
It's like, I don't know. But I'm trying to turn that off. Okay, well, I want to finish. I have some kind of random fun questions to ask you if you are game to these.
Yeah, sure.
They're I promise I'm not here to stump you, but some of them your answers are very important. I don't want to undersell it here. Okay. So I'm relieved that this seems like a false alarm, but how nervous were you when you heard the Interventions loop was not going to be playing at Epcot for that short period of time?
I definitely had the wind knocked out of me. That was one that's I'm still healing a little bit from that.
Yeah, it was. I was kind of like, yeah, okay, but when I heard it was playing again, I was like, okay,
phew, yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing. Well, I know you referenced a lot of background music that you like earlier, but we're gonna go bigger. So, any theme park attraction, any background music, and you can't say the Interventions loop. What is your favorite piece of music that plays in an attraction or in the background? Just one choice.
Oh, God. Okay. One choice. Ooh, I was not prepared for this.
That's the idea.
Yeah, you definitely got me with that one. Okay. All right. If I have to just pick in this moment one piece of background music, I'm going to go Tomorrowland.
It's a good choice. I like it. Okay. So I know sometimes you have been working a bit as a travel agent or affiliate. And so I want to ask you this question. How excited are you to try and explain Disney Genie Plus, the Lightning Lane, and all the other options to anyone who's looking for you to help them book their trips?
If I'm being quite honest, I'm going to say not excited. If it's a scale of 1 to 5, I'm going to say a 0. I'm not looking forward to that. Mostly, I think just because they've released so little information. I feel like it's been so vague. So I'm trying to wrap my own head around it, even for my own future trips. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to navigate this? And then to add on to that, how do I help other people? Like, if I can't even do this for myself, how am I going to help other people navigate this and do this? And I'm trying to wait and hold back. And I want to get the full picture so I can actually play around with it and interact with it a little bit here. But at the moment where I'm at, based on what they've released, I am not excited to try and explain that at all. Mostly because I can't even get my own head around it at the moment.
Yeah, same here, because you can speculate and you can read rumors and such, but right now, I mean, there are things we know, but there's that missing piece of paying more for what are you paying for and how much is it and how there's a lot of, and I'm not sure they know for sure. I think they may tweak it as they go, but it's supposed to come so soon. By the time this episode comes out, it may already be there, and it's pretty crazy. So I'm right with you. All right. Well, a little less crazy. I'm just curious. There's a few new upcoming restaurants coming at Walt Disney World. I'm wondering which one of these are you most excited about? I will give you choices here. Are you most excited of these three of the Woody's Roundup Rodeo Barbecue at the studios, Space 220, or the La Crêperie de Paris or Paris? Which one of these excites you the most?
I'm probably the most excited for Space 220 just because of the experience that you get along with it. I'll be honest, I haven't spent as much time looking over the menus on these as I might otherwise have done at this point. So, I mean, I've seen a little bit of La Crêperie de Paris just based on some of the first footage that has been released, kind of a thing. But I haven't done a deep dive into everything yet. But I feel like Space 220 could be something really cool. There are a lot of opportunities for memory making and experiences, along with some really cool menu options that I think would be really cool to experience for myself.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. And I admit I haven't really looked that closely at the menus either. So I'm right with you. But Space 220, I feel like it's going to be the hardest to get into. I have a feeling, though. But it should be cool.
Without a doubt. I'm with you. I'm thinking that's going to be one that you're going to have to get up at 5 a.m. to get your dining reservation in if you want a shot.
It's weird. The Crêperie de Paris. Oh my gosh, why do I keep making myself say that? The Ratatouille restaurant, the restaurant right there, they say they're doing first come, first serve, which to me is kind of like, well, that's a weird approach. So I wonder, we'll see what happens if they're trying to move away from that, wake up at 5 a.m. a bunch of days out. But I think they can't do that for Space 220. They have to have some sort of...
Oh, yeah. The demand is going to be too high. I mean, there's going to be far too many people who are going to be interested in it, especially when they first start taking reservations.
Yeah, because it's been so long, too, and they've built it up so much. Okay, well, another important question here. Universal loves to call Volcano Bay its third theme park. So do you think, is that ridiculous, or does that sort of actually work?
I'll say sort of actually, because the theming of it, there really are some unifying aspects to Volcano Bay that set it apart from other water parks. I mean, there is a background story of the Waturi people kind of a thing, and to have the Tapu Tapu where you can interact with these different touch points, and you have different characters who are, coming to life, or features that are interacting with other guests and things. I mean, it's really cool. It really fits the theme of this fictional people and this kind of island locale that they've set up for the park. That being said, it's still a water park. I mean, at the end of the day, it's water slides and a wave pool and a water coaster, and so it's still a water park. But the theming that is there is pretty cool.
Wow, you had me for a while, and I was just like, wow, I've never heard somebody really lean into this argument so much. And then you finish with the water park. So yeah,
well,
I was like, wow, because I always laugh when they're like, Epic Universe will be our fourth park, and I'm like doing the numbers. I'm like, 1, 2, no, I don't understand.
No,
doesn't work. Okay, so 2 more questions before we finish here. So I don't love this question, but I feel like it's fun to ask sometimes. But what's an attraction that most people seem to love that I'm not even going to say you think is bad, but doesn't click as much with you?
All right. I might be making some enemies, but the one that has the wait time that's just ridiculous, that I don't understand a lot of the time, is Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I love Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. It's a cute little ride, but the wait time, I would almost never wait for the wait time as it's posted for standby. I wouldn't even go on it unless I had some kind of a fast pass or something for it, because the ride is too short. It's adorable. I can't wait to take my daughters on it, and it's going to be a great experience for them. But it's really just a beautifully themed animatronic kiddie coaster.
I'm with you. I've only ever ridden it with Fast Pass, and my girls love it. But it'll be really interesting. I use interesting very lightly here. If they decide that may be one of the pay extra ones, because that would really raise the question in my head of like, okay, 2-hour wait, whatever the money is, not ride. It's just, I hate having to make that decision, but that's a perfect example, unlike a Rise of the Resistance, where I look at it and I go, I'm not sure what to do here. So I think it's a good answer. I love the coaster, love the mine part, but when you get through the mine part, you go down the hill, you're around the corner, you're basically done.
And you're done.
Yeah. So it's a great ride if I could wait 45 minutes or less.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you have little kids. I mean, I wouldn't want to wait in that line for that ride for much more than 20, 30.
Well, you see all the people though. You get to like press the buttons with the diamonds and everything. I've never done that. They always show that in the I don't know if that's even done anymore with COVID. But regardless, I agree. And again, you mentioned Slinky Dog. That has a big outdoor queue. Ugh, no.
Yeah.
No. All right. Well, more positively, last question. What is your favorite all-time theme park attraction, whether it's still there or not? Like if someone said, what's your favorite? What would you choose? And I'm okay if you choose a few here, because this is a very hard question.
That's a loaded question. So I think if I were to pick a couple of my all times most beloved, even, nostalgia or for rewritability or what have you, one of them would have to be the People Mover. That is just, it's not a trip to the Magic Kingdom if we don't get to go on the People Mover. And it's one of those, I know it's got a cult following kind of a thing, but on a more it's so relaxing. And it really just kind of encompasses everything that I've ever wanted Tomorrowland to actually be, like the whole idea of that People Mover and making society better. It has that very hopeful for the future kind of feel to it. That is one of the reasons why I just keep loving coming back time after time. So it just kind of embodies that optimism. I think along a similar vein would be Spaceship Earth. I've seen a lot of different versions of it. I gotta say I wasn't a huge fan of and it's the current version that's there still, with the descent is pretty much just lots of glowy lights and you're pushing your screen kind of thing. I wasn't also a huge fan of, for some reason, the version before that where they had the bees just sticks in my head, where they had the kids class and they had the flying bees all over the place. That was always interesting. I think I have nostalgia for the first versions I ever kind of experienced, sort of a thing. But I'm again hopeful, cautiously optimistic that when Spaceship Earth gets to be refurbished, they will do it some justice at some point here. I do feel like if I'm doing all-time theme park attractions just in general though, you gotta go with some modern ones too. So I'd have to pick Rise of the Resistance, because I think it's really going to revolutionize where we go with theme park attractions from here on out. And for the same reason, I think I have to pick Hagrid's, because it's another one of those experiences where I think it's just going to start creating a new evolution of different things that we get to experience at theme parks.
Yeah, those are both great examples. And of course, you start talking about, future and optimism and People Movers, and I'm just like, oh, this is great. I like this answer a lot. This is totally speaking my language. But Spaceship Earth, again, same sort of thing where, like you mentioned, where I'm like, the descent needs some work. They could make an update. They could really do it. And there's that little voice that's like, yeah, but it could be worse. And it's like, oh, but I'm willing to let them take a shot, as long as that's what they focus on versus some other areas. But I just think it's going to be a little while, because they're going to be skittish about, beyond what they're doing now. They're doing a lot of things now. But after that, they may take a breather before they get diving into more things.
Right.
Well, great. Well, Lauren, this has been a lot of fun. Again, I feel bad that I haven't been able to get to the parks, but sometime soon, hopefully. But so if people want to check out, connect with you online or check out what you're doing, are there good places that they should go to do so?
Yeah, so I mostly use Twitter when I'm talking with my Disney nerddom sort of a thing, and that's kind of been my social media outlet of choice. And I'm L Stand on a Jet Ski on Twitter. That was a joke when my husband and I first met, and I was trying to figure out, how do I say this last name? And he said, oh, it's like stand on a jet ski. I was like, okay. So that's my Twitter handle there. And I'm always happy to talk Disney. I also do plan trips. I'm a travel agent on the side, but I mostly do it just for fun because I can't afford to take all the trips that I want to. So if I can help other people plan their trips and enjoy it, then I get to be geeky and do all the planning and enjoy the anticipation of it without having to front all of the money for myself. So I do have a travel agency. I'm affiliated with Academy Travel, Mickey Vacations, and there's a Facebook page that I have there too with my name. But mostly just looking to talk Disney, and always happy to share stories and swap opinions with anybody who's ever willing to share them with me.
Well, excellent. I'll definitely post links to all of those on the show notes. But Lauren, this has been great. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks so much, Dan. I've had a lot of fun too.
If you enjoyed this episode, you should check out my interviews with a lot of other big-time fans and people that cover the parks, like Len Testa, Ashley Carter, Lou Mangello, Tim Grassi, Carly Wiesel, Skipper Ben, so many others. You can go to tomorrowsociety.com/podcast with an S at the end to learn more about those. If you'd like to help out the show, another way you can do so is to leave a 5-star rating or review through Apple Podcasts. And I know many of you use different platforms now to listen to episodes, but regardless of your platform, subscribe, leave ratings, help out. It makes a difference and allows more people to find the show. If you'd like to get a hold of me, send me an email, dan@tomorrowsociety.com. Follow me on Twitter @TomorrowSOC, Facebook or Instagram @Tomorrow Society, or look for the Tomorrow Society Podcast channel on YouTube. The Tomorrow Society Podcast is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Dan Heaton. Music was written by Adam Hookey. It's performed by the Sophisticated Babies. Next time, I will be talking with Dave Bossert about his new book on Claude Coates, the Disney legend. I am so excited about the book, and also really enjoyed talking to Dave about his career at Disney. Go out there, get vaccinated. Let's do it so we can all get back to the parks more next year and beyond. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will talk to you again next time.